Welcome to the Target Increment demonstration for the drop table team in the Johns Hopkins University Foundations of Software Engineering course for fall 2019. Our team has made many improvements since our minimal increment demonstration in order to complete the full Clueless game. This demonstration will be similar to the other two, but slightly more lengthy and detail-oriented. We will talk about what our team's workflow is like, what our team added, what worked, what didn't, and then we will do the actual demonstration of our game. And lastly, we will go over the lessons learned over the course of this semester. And with all that stated, let's get started. Okay, so to start, we're going to talk about the workflow that our team used when developing our Clueless game. So as you can see here, we're using Java and the Eclipse IDE to develop our software. We pretty much wrote the entire thing in Java, and we used the Java Swing, package library to write the GUI stuff. We used Jira here to track our progress as well as organize the workload across our team. So that was a very helpful tool in getting our assignments done and seeing who was working on what. We hosted our code on GitHub, also pretty standard. We have our branches here that everybody delivered into. We delivered into develop, and then we merged that into master when we were done. We also used the Maven build automation tool to actually package our software. So I can give a quick example of that now. So we can just do our Maven clean and then package it. So as you can see here, it's running, and then it builds up our jar files that will be used to run our game. And so that's the general workflow that we were using for our Clueless game, and now we're going to talk about the improvements and changes made. Okay, so our team made some pretty general improvements and changes over the course of, between this minimal increment and our target increment. So our team added logic for handling suggestions, so we've created broadcast messages that say who suggested what, who disproved it, and what card they disproved it with. That was a little bit of message traffic, having to go back and forth between the different clients there. We created logic for handling accusations and players winning the game. So that's good to actually wrap up, when a player makes the correct accusation and the game is over. We added clean movement in, so that was an improvement from our minimal increment. All of the characters move smoothly now. We created the general flow of the game, so it starts properly, the turns all cycle properly, and then, like I said before, it ends properly with a correct accusation. And then we added in some ending animations, which will be demonstrated later. So some other changes that we need to make as well. So like I mentioned with the Maven packaging, we make jar files that our client and server are run from. So we needed to make our application work with command line arguments using variable ports and IP addresses. And this is true since the IP address from the DHCP server may make the server have a different IP address every time. So we need to be able to variably change that without having to repackage the software. We wanted to make our application portable, being able to run outside of our Eclipse IDE. In our other two increments, we were running it out of the Eclipse IDE, but when we're going to run on 6 different virtual machines, we wanted to be able to not have to have Eclipse running on each one. So it made sense to create the jar files. And so our actual virtual machines that we will be demonstrating on will be 6 Lubuntu virtual machines. So that's like the typical distro of Ubuntu, but it's more lightweight. Since there's 6 virtual machines, it's kind of taxing on system resources, so that's why we went with that direction. So there's going to be 6 clients running on the 6 different virtual machines, and then 1 client will also be running the server. And so now we're actually going to demonstrate the game. Okay, so here are 6 virtual machine windows you can see here. So the windows are a little bit cramped, but we're going to do the best that we can. So, like I said before, one of the virtual machines is going to double up. One's going to have to run both the server and the client. So we're going to use client number 1 for that. So as you can see here, this is our command line arguments for our server. So we just tell it what application to run, which is our server, and then the port to run it on. So we've been testing with 54678, so we're going to do that again. And so it starts up our server here. Quick note, so the clueless.jar is sitting in the home folder of every virtual machine here. And all of these virtual machines are completely separate computers, but they're all networked together using the VMware Virtual Net. So under the network adapter options here, you can see it's VMnet 0, and all of the different virtual machines have a different IP address. So this one's 162. This one over here we can do, it's 163. Our server here, we can check, is 194, so that's going to be important in a second. So if we want to start up our first client, this is our command line arguments for our client. So client number 1 is going to be player 1 here, so it's going to connect first. So the IP address is 194, as we see up here, and then the port 54678, just like we said on the server side. And so we can start that up. And so we have our GUI interface here. So if we go along the line and we start up our command line, and you can see that the player is in game, so we have a new character here, and that will increment by 1 up until 6. And you can see that the player join messages are reflected here. Alright, and then our last character here. Alright, and we have all 6 players in the game now. So we can hit the start game button up here that is shown on the first player when enough players have joined. So we hit start game. And so basically the first round of turns is the characters moving from their home bases onto the map. So we can go around here, basically click on everybody. And now everybody is off of their home bases. So quick note, like I mentioned in the minimal increment demonstration, the cards get dealt out and they are reflected here on your own character's detective notebook, so you know which cards that you have. And we can also see the messages here running from the server. So it's quite a log that's built up already with all the characters' movements and the dealing of the cards, but all of the information is in there. So we can go back to Miss Scarlet's turn. And so you can see the movement dialog here. So you have the choice of the 2 rooms that Miss Scarlet is next to, the hall or the lounge. You can make a suggestion if you like, so we can do like Mr. Green with a dagger. You can make that suggestion. So the suggestion dialog appears over here. If you have a card that can be disproved, and we can see that Mr. Green was moved to the hall here. And so that's another requirement that has been fulfilled. So you can choose a card to reveal with. So Mr. Green did not have a card that could disprove Miss Scarlet's accusation, which is why he was automatically skipped. This logic is done in our server's game logic, because since the server knows which player has what cards, it automatically skips them because they wouldn't have a dialogue, or they wouldn't have a card to put in the dialog box anyway. And so we can see the next player in the list here, Miss White, has 2 cards that she can disprove with. So we can we can use the hall here. And so you can see that the message is reflected here. And so now that we know that the hall is not where the murder took place, so we can just mark it off here. And so we can also do accusations. So if we're going to take a wild guess here, that Mr. Green did it in the conservatory with a lead pipe, you can see that as probability would infer our accusation was incorrect, and they can no longer win the game. So as the turns go around, that person can no longer take their turns, but they can help disprove suggestions and everything with the cards that they have in their hand. So now we can have Colonel Mustard move to the dining room. We can go have Professor Plum move to the library, and the game would go around like this. And so we can make another suggestion with a dagger or something, and so Colonel Mustard can disprove it. And he has the conservatory card, and so now we can mark off on our checklist here that it is not the conservatory. So we can click across here. Okay, so that is the game running with all 6 clients. So what we can do now is play a full game. And so since the clue rules state that you can do between 3 and 6 players for the game, I'm going to run the game with 3 players to show that our application has that functionality as well. And it will also take less time to play through the full game because it's a little bit cumbersome to click through all 6 things. And so I'll get that started up in just a second. Okay, and so now for the second part of our demonstration, where I'm going to play through the full game using just 3 characters to show that the game can work for 3, 4, 5, and 6 players. So I can start up our server just like we did before. I can start up our client on all 3 virtual machines here, and so you can see they all start up, and the start game button appears when there's at least 3 players in the game. So we can deal out our cards, the game map comes up, and so we can move our characters off of their home bases. So you can see that there's a lot more cards dealt to each player, and this is because the players not in the game do not get dealt cards, which makes sense. And so we can move to the hall here. We can also fill in our detective notebook here now. So we know it's not Miss Scarlet. We know it's not Mr. Green. We can click down the list here. Oop. And we know it's not Miss White. We know it's not done with the dagger. We know it's not in the billiard room. We know it wasn't with the wrench. Okay, so now we can start making some suggestions. Here we go. For the kitchen, right, because that has not been disproved yet. And we know it's not Miss Scarlet or Miss White, so we can say, let's do Colonel Mustard here. Actually, let's do Miss Peacock, and we can do that. And so the kitchen card was revealed, so we know hasn't been done in the kitchen. So we can mark that off the list. We can make a suggestion, Professor Plum, with the candlestick. We can reveal the candlestick card. We know it's not done. It wasn't done with the candlestick. We can just move to the hallway here. Let me fill in our GUI. We can go to the study, make a suggestion that it was Miss Peacock. With the wrench, we'll say. Actually, that's been disproved already. The rope. Alright, so we have the study room that we can now mark off. And so we can move again to the lounge, make a suggestion that, let's say, we disproved Mr. Green already. Professor Plum, with the dagger's been disproved. Let's say the revolver. You can reveal either card here, the lounge or the revolver. I'll go with, let's reveal the lounge. So we want to move to the hall now that we know that hasn't been done. The lounge, we can go across. So it seems like no one's had Professor Plum's card yet. I can see that's not, okay, let's see, Mr. Green has it. So, kind of cheating a little bit here, but we can see by process of elimination that the murder cards, Colonel Mustard is the person that has done it. And by using these two, we know that's the lead pipe, and that the murder took place in the library, I believe. So we can just make a quick accusation here to kind of speed it up. So, library, Colonel Mustard with the lead pipe. And so when our accusation is correct, it says which player won the game. In this case, I made the accusation on Miss White. And so you can hit the little dialogue box that comes up, and we have a fun animation that kind of just pollutes the board with the portrait of the character that won the game. And so with that, that is our Clueless game run all the way through. And so now we're going to move on to the lessons learned part of our target increment demonstration. and that'll be it. Okay, and so for the last part of our demonstration is to just talk about the lessons learned over the course of the semester while we were completing our Clueless game. So our team felt like we hit all of the requirements needed to create the project, but there is definitely some room for improvement, and we definitely learned some lessons over the course of creating it. So we could have spent a little bit more time creating and revising our design before we started actually coding. And that definitely helps prevent major rework down the road. We could have ensured there were requirements related to our different properties of different computers and operating systems, things like monitor size. And this would have helped things like our GUI was sized a little bit large, and it was really hard to fit all 6 of them looking kind of nicely on the screen, as you definitely saw. We could have also been a little bit more careful with merges and branches by implementing a better review process. We didn't have too many merge issues, but it's definitely a good practice. We could have put a little bit more documentation in our code as well for debugging and if we wanted to expand on different features and functionalities. We could have updated the project schedule better as we went along. That allows for better planning. We could have used the different features and task tracking functionality in Jira a little bit better. We still use the the Scrum board pretty well, but we could have kind of employed some of those better features. We could have done a little bit more regression testing as well to make sure no bugs were introduced. We had that in our design document, I think, that we were going to do more testing, and we never really got to it. And then we could have used more existing use the functionality of existing libraries in Java that could have helped us instead of reinventing the wheel. And so with that, that's our lessons learned document, and is the conclusion to our target increment for the drop table team. So thanks for listening and watching.